Hello students, welcome you once again to these video lectures. Two lectures on Dylan Thomas have already been given to you. One video lecture was there on Dylan Thomas, the basic introduction, and then another video lecture was on his poem, critical analysis of the poem, Refusal to Mourn the Death. Now, in this video lecture, I'll be discussing with you another poem of Dylan Thomas, which is prescribed in the course, and the poem is Poem in October. I'll give you a brief introduction of this poem, and then I'll come to the text. Now, this poem, Poem in October, is this poem consists of 7 stanzas, and these stanzas are separated into sets of 10 lines. So we have 7 stanzas, and each stanza consists of 10 lines. You can call this poem a birthday poem. It's a birthday poem because it celebrates the birthday of the poet. Now, that is the basic point which is there in this poem is the birthday. When you read the poem, you will find out. Now, when we talk about birthday poem, there are some other poets also who wrote birthday poems, because you are going to study this poem in October, which is based on the birthday of the poet. So let us now look into some other poems also which have the same kind of theme. So there is one poem by Ben Jonson, one of the Jacobean dramatists, who is also a poet. And Ben Jonson wrote to Sir William Sidney on his birthday. This poem has it is also a kind of birthday poem. And then there is one poem by Alexander Pope, a neoclassical poet, and the title of the poem is To Mrs. M.B. on her birthday. M.B. on her birthday. Then one satirist, Jonathan Swift, he wrote a poem, Stella's Birthday, having the same theme, that is a birthday poem it is. Then Dr. Samuel Johnson wrote a birthday poem entitled 1 and 20. Then there is one poem by Christina Rossetti, and the title of the poem is A Birthday. Tom Gunn, a modern poet, 20th century poet, wrote a poem, birthday poem. The title of the poem is For a Birthday. And then Sylvia Plath, the confessional poetess of America. We always compare Sylvia Plath and Kamala Das, Indian English poet, as far as confessional elements are concerned. So Sylvia Plath wrote a poem entitled A Birthday Present. So these are some poems actually which you can call birthday poems. Now this poem which we are going to discuss, that is birthday poem, is written by Dylan Thomas. But Dylan Thomas wrote 4 birthday poems. One is Especially When the October Wind. This is one poem. Then we have 24 Years. This is another birthday poem of Dylan Thomas. And then the third poem is Poem on His Birthday. And then the poem which is prescribed in the course, Poem in October. Now this poem, Poem in October, tells of a speaker's journey out of autumn season and up a hill to reclaim childhood delight. Not only the childhood delight, but also the summer season, and also his spirituality. This poem was first conceived in 1941 and had a different kind of opening. And the opening was, it was my 27th year to heaven. This was actually the opening line of the poem, which he conceived in the year 1941. Now, the final poem, which was completed in the year 1944 and published in Horizon magazine in February 1945, before it appeared in his collection of poems called Deaths and Entrances in 1946, had the altered line, and these are the altered line, and the altered line are, it was my 30th year to heaven, the line with which the poem begins. So you will keep in your mind that this poem was first conceived in 1941, and it had a different kind of opening, and the opening was, it was my 27th year to heaven. Then the final poem, it came in 1944, published in Horizon magazine in 1945, and then ultimately it was published in Dylan Thomas's collection of poems called Deaths and Entrances in 1946. When it was published in 1945 and ultimately in the collection, then it has this beginning, it was my 30th year to heaven, the opening line of the poem which you are going to study. Now, you have already studied in the biographical detail of the poet that I have already discussed with you, that he had been writing and publishing poetry since his adolescent years, because he was a very precocious child, very good in English. Hence, at 30, he was already, well into his poetic career. He was quite mature, quite perfect. He had moved from the small fishing village of Swansea to London, as you know that, I have already told you in biographical details that, from that village of Swansea, he went to London and later to, America. Now, as a poet of the modernist era, that is, just after, W. Yeats and T.S. Eliot he wrote during 40s. So as a poet of modernist era, he was very much aware of the effects of industrialization. That industrialization had the effect on the agriculture of the country, and also the effect of the urban on the rural side. Now, he had also had to move from Swansea to London to achieve financial stability, because he needed money. As I told you that he, had the bad habit of drinking and all, and that is why he had a very notorious private life. Now, every time a kind of alienation of man from nature bothered the poet. Now, on his 30th birthday, it is his actually alienation from nature that prompted him, triggered him, and he his return to Swansea colors his reminiscences, and ultimately the poem comes where he shows his fondness towards the nature. Now, the poise between childish glory and the sadness of maturity, summer and winter, past and future, all these points are maintained to the end. When you read the poem, you'll find out that the man of 30 and the boy he remembers, they are one. Past and present are also united. When the town which he describes, that is, Loghern, woke up, the poet crossed the border of reality and climbed up the Fern Hill of Swansea, where he spent his childhood days in the farm of his aunt. Now, when you read the poem, you will find out that suddenly the autumn season changes. It changes into summer and spring. And the poet, has a very good experience, there. When you come to this, the poem, when you discuss this poem, you find out that there are certain important themes which the poet wants to celebrate here. And the first is, which I have just told you, is the theme of nature, return to nature, love for nature, fondness for nature. And then he described childhood as a time of innocence, and also alienation in adulthood. Now, the next important point which he celebrates here is the role of memory, because through memory he recollects his childhood reminiscences. And a next important point which he celebrates in the poem is nostalgia for the past. And when you say nostalgia for the past, we are all, or when you say love for nature, we are reminded of the romantic, period. And I told you in my introductory lecture that Dylan Thomas is a neo-romantic poet because he celebrated most of the themes of the romantic poets. So nostalgia for the past, is there in this poem. The poet expresses his deep longing to his beautiful, early days and the old past. That is very much a scene in this poem. Now, this poem, creates a fantasy world where things exist and mingle in wild, lovely, confusion. Ultimately, I mean, in the poem, you find out in the at the very end of the poem that fantasy is drawn in the sea of reality, and he comes to the world of reality. Don't you remember, John Keats, who said that fancy cannot cheat well as she is supposed to do. I mean, you sit on the viewless wings of poesy and you can go to the world of imagination, but you cannot stay in the world of imagination for a very long time. Ultimately, you have to face the reality. One can skip the present for any length of time. I mean, you can extend it for a limited period of time, but you cannot skip the present for a long period of time, for any length of time. Romantic world is always short-lived, and for the survival you have to come to the real world, no matter how cruel or foggy or bloody it is. Now, when you read the poem, you find out Dylan Thomas's sacramental view of nature and the theme of remembered childhood. The speaker gives a sense of profusion and richness of nature by enumeration and amplification. There are so many points where the nature is elaborated. He also tries to show the unity between man and nature. Man and nature are merged, as we find in the poetry of Wordsworth. Now, the poet also tries to show the presence of God behind all the objects of nature, because nature looks extremely beautiful. When we say that the God is present behind the objects of nature, that is, I think all of you know that it is called pantheism. So pantheism is also visible here in this poem. Now, Dylan Thomas resembles Wordsworth and William Blake as far as his attitude towards childhood is concerned. But Wordsworth sees a child from a distance and laments the fact that he can no longer see the heavenly radiance around the objects of nature as he had seen in his childhood. Now, this is there in Wordsworth's poetry, and I think you will be remembering Wordsworth's poem Immortality Ode, where he talks about the lost glory of the childhood, and the opening line. I still remember a few important lines of Immortality Ode. The opening lines where Wordsworth says, "There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth, and every common sight, to me did seem apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream. It is not now as it hath been of yore. Turn wheresoever I may by night or day, the things which I have seen I now can see no more." These are the opening lines of the poem Immortality Ode. Now, but Dylan Thomas, like William Blake, becomes a child himself through imagination and can see and enjoy the beauty of nature through the eyes of the child. And this you are going to see in the poem, that he becomes a child and enjoys, the nature. As far as, certain, literary devices are concerned, you find out two important figures of speech which are very much used in this poem. And not only in this poem, you find out these two figures of speech in most of the poems. and they are alliteration and personification. These are the two rhetorical devices, literary devices, which Dylan Thomas, used in this poem. When I discuss the poem, I'll tell you, but he uses alliteration, for example, in the second line of the fourth stanza, when he writes, and over the sea, wet church the size of a snail. We have the S sound. He personifies water in the poem. We have that water is personified. He personifies water, trees, climate, summertime, mystery, and joy. He gives, life to the non-living objects, and also abstract emotions with human qualities. All of his personifications, they serve to bring up, visual image in the mind of the reader, and we can easily, understand the poem when we find such kind of, images. Now let us start the poem. You please take your text, though the text you can see on the screen also, and let us now discuss the poem in quite detail. Now, stanza 1 of the poem. It was my 30th year to heaven, woke to my hearing from harbour and neighbourwood, and the mussel pooled and the heron priested shore, the morning beckon with water praying and call of seagull and rook, and the knock of sailing boats on the net webbed wall, myself to set foot that second in the still sleeping town and set forth. Now, there are certain words which you just see at the vocabulary of the poem. Mussel is a kind of fish. You have this mussel pooled. Heron is a kind of bird. Now, when the poet says mussel pooled, meaning is pools full of mussels, full of these kind of fish. Now, heron priested. Heron, I have told you that it's kind of bird, and when the poet says heron priested, it means herons sitting on the shore. They seem to him to be the priests praying for him. Now, to set foot means to come out of the house. That second means that very moment. We have also seagull. Seagull is a kind of water bird. Rook is a kind of crow. Now, it was my 30th. What does actually the poet want to say in this stanza, in the first stanza? The poet gives, a picture of the harbor, the neighboring wood, the fish in the pools of, water, the heron sitting on the shore, the seagull and the rook calling, the boats sailing on the water. Now, this is actually the scenario of his 30th year. When he said, it was my 30th year to heaven, means he has completed 30 years of his life. And when he has completed 30 years of his life, what is actually this morning? That woke to my hearing from harbour and neighbourwood. The pool is full of mussels. The shore is full of herons, and they are compared with a priest which is symbol of holiness. The morning beckon means call, with water praying. Water is also praying on the occasion of the birthday of the poet. Here you find out that how water is personified. And the call of seagull and rook, and the knock of sailing boats, and the net webbed wall. Now, this is actually the scenario of the harbor, just outside the town. The poet, he says, myself to set foot, means the poet walks out of the town, summoned by the call of the birds and the beauties of the natural sights. How beautiful the nature is. He is in the town, but he's attracted by the beauty of the nature outside. Myself to set foot means I have come out of my house. That second means that very moment in the still sleeping town and set forth. The town is still sleeping because it's early morning. The town is sleeping, and I have come out of the town. So this is there in this stanza one, that the poet, when he said my 30th year to heaven, the meaning is that he has completed 30 years of his, of his life, and the morning is extremely beautiful. The harbor, the neighboring wood, pools, shore, and the morning is, calling him. The water is also praying on his birthday, and that very moment he left the town, and he left the town at that particular time. The entire town was sleeping because it was, quite early. Now come to second stanza. My birthday began with water birds and the birds of the winged trees, and the birds of the winged trees flying my name above the farms and the white horses. And I rose in rainy autumn and walked abroad in a shower of all my days. High tide and the heron dived when I took the road over the border, and the gates of the town closed as the town awoke. Now, winged trees. Now, look at again the word, winged trees. Winged trees and trees with leaves. Now, he said trees, with leaves. Again, we have the personification of personification here. Now, my birthday began with water birds and the birds, the winged trees flying my name. They were reciting my name as if celebrating, my birthday. Look at the word walked abroad. Walked abroad means walked out of the doors. That is, leaving the town behind. Now, in this, what happens in this second stanza, that his birthday, actually, in the first stanza, he says that, I have completed 30 years of, my life. Morning is, full of the beauty of the natural sights, and I'm beckoned by morning, and that very moment I left the town is still sleeping. Now, he says, my 30th birthday, it began with, water birds. And these water birds are, celebrating my birthday. Trees are also, shouting, my name, reciting my name. He says that I have left the town, and I'm going towards the hill. Now come to the look. High tide and the heron dived when I took the road over the border, and the gates of the town closed as the town awoke. So they actually the border of the hill, and the border of the line between the hill and the town. Now look at the third stanza. Pale rain over the dwindling harbour, and o'er the sea wet church the size of a snail, with its horns through mist, and the castle brown as owls. But all the gardens of spring and summer were blooming in the tall tales. Beyond the border and under the lark full cloud, there could I marvel my birthday away, but the weather turned around. Now he's reaching towards that, Fern Hill. When reaching towards the, Fern Hill, now the harbor is actually dwindling, becoming smaller in size because he's at the top. And over the sea wet church the size of a snail, and the church is looking like a snail, looking as small as a snail, with the horns through mist and castle brown as owls. But all the gardens of spring and summer were blooming in the top. What happens actually? The poet is. It seems quite contradictory, because at the same time he is discussing about autumn, spring, and summer. Beyond the border and under the lark full cloud, the sky which is full of the lark birds. There could I marvel my birthday at at that fern hill. I celebrate my birthday. And I told you that he is there at the he is standing on the hilltop, and from the height of that particular hill, everything looked very small and tiny. Like the harbor is dwindling, and the church is looking like as small as as a snail, and the poet is spending his whole birthday in this beautiful idyllic and idyllic surrounding. This just like you know idyllic surrounding is there. Edenic pleasure actually he's getting here, the pleasure of heaven. Now he says, there could I marvel my birthday. I could marvel I could celebrate my birthday in this beautiful surrounding, idyllic surrounding, which looks like Eden. But the weather turned around. Oh, you see, weather turned around means from youth he began to imagine the glories of the childhood. Now the tone changes. The beauty, he's there at the hilltop, and the beauty of the nature is there. He is celebrating his birthday, but the weather turned around means from youth actually he is indulging in the childhood. So he's going to celebrate the childhood here. So here we find the role of the memory. Now, what happens in stanza 5, that it turned away from the blithe country and down the other air, and the blue altered sky streamed again the wonder of summer with apples, pears, and red currants. And I saw in the turning so clearly a child's forgotten mornings when I walked with his mother through the parables of sunlight and the legends of the green chapels. Now, you see what happens in stanza 4. He says, from youth actually he is coming to the glories of the childhood. Now, in stanza 5, the poet's mind turned from the beautiful scene, the hill, and he goes into the world of his childhood. The beautiful scene of the childhood comes before him, and he remembers his childhood when he used to visit his aunt and Joan's house, and then he could see the place full of apples, pears, currants, etc. So he's also reminded of forgotten mornings. You just see turned away from the blithe country. Blithe isn't happy. What is this blithe country? The spring and summer on the hill. And he goes into the world of the childhood, and down the other air, and the blue altered sky streamed again a wonder of summer. He remembered the childhood days when he was there at with his mother at aunt's house, where he find the wonder of the summer with apples, pears, and red currants. Currants are you call them kismis, and. And I saw in the turning so clearly a child's forgotten mornings, when he walked with his mother. He remembers his childhood days when he used to walk with his mother, and the sunlight was actually giving some, parables. And the green chapel, the green woods were giving some, legends. The meaning of parable is written here, short and simple story that, teaches a moral or religious idea. So, what is this other air? Visions and memory of the childhood, the other air which is you find, and down the other air and the blue altered sky. The role of the memory is very important. And the twice told of fields of infancy, that his tears burned my cheeks and his heart moved in mine. These were the woods, the river and sea, where a boy in the listening summertime of the dead whispered the truth of his joy to the trees and the stones and the fish in the tide, and the mystery sang alive still in the water and singing bird. birds. Now, twice told the fields of infancy, meaning is the glory and wonder of childhood, first lived through and now remembered. He's remembering the childhood, and that is why he says twice, fold. This is summer time of the dead. When it is summer time of the dead, meaning is the past of the poet, that is the childhood, memories, childhood days. Now he just sang alive. Sang alive means started feeling the same joy, same delight, same pleasure as he had experienced in nature as a boy. Means when he was a child. So, in this stanza, actually, what happens that the poet remembers the same fields, uh, which he actually visited when he was a child. The poet also remembers the tears which he had shed in the tours of the childhood. Those tears are again flowing down his eyes. He's experiencing the same kind of feelings which he experienced when he was a child. He says, these were the woods, the river and sea, where a boy in the listening summertime of the dead whispered the truth of his joy to the trees and the stones and the fish in the tide, and the mystery sang alive still in the water and singing birds. Now, and there could I marvel my birthday. Now I can, and there could I marvel my birthday away, but the weather turned around, and the true joy of the long dead child sang burning in the sun. It was my 30th year to heaven, stood there in the summer noon, though the town below lay leaved the October blood. Oh, may my heart's truth still be sung on this high hill in years turning. Now, what happens in this seventh stanza? The he says that this marvel celebration of my birthday actually it comes to an end. Why does it come to an end? Because the weather turns around, and he comes back to the harsh reality of the present. As I told you, actually he is there in the imaginative world. He is there in the world of the childhood. Uh, though he still stands on the hill, the summer noon of the childhood, he is aware of the town below. The town is there below with this fog and mist and these October blood. The meaning is red colored autumn leaves. So he says that I am there at the hilltop, but and I'm indulging in the childhood. I'm celebrating my childhood, but I cannot remain in the childhood for a very long time. That is, one cannot remain in the imaginative world for a very long time. One has to come back to the world of reality. How harsh it is. So he says, ear to heaven stood there in the summer noon, though the town below lay leaved the October. How bloody, harsh the world is, but one has to come back to the real world. Oh, may my heart's truth still be sung on this high hill in years, turning. He says that, how does the lyric actually conclude? The lyric concludes with the poet's prayer that on his next birthday he should be able to sing equally well of his heart's truth, all the deeply felt experiences and the truths which he has realized and experienced. But what does the poet actually said? Look at still be sung. The meaning of still be sung is, may he write a poem as great as this one. And the poem, as I told you, ends with a prayer where he makes a prayer that he will also compose the same kind of poem on his next birthday. But what does the poet want to say? That fancy cannot cheat for a very long time. One has to come to the world of reality. You are also reminded, of the last stanza of the poem "Ode to Nightingale," where Keats actually has tried to escape from the real world, which was full of sorrow, and went into the world of the nightingale, which is full of beauty. But ultimately, in the last stanza, he says, these are the lines actually where Keats says, "Forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Adieu, the fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, my plaintive anthem fades past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it is buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is that music. Do I wake or sleep?" You find some similarity here that one cannot remain in the world of imagination for a very long time. Thank you very much.